Celtics and their fans are enjoying an incredible run so far this season. Winners of 7 straight, a spicy Tatum 50-piece yesterday, and we're actually beating bad teams. But now another potentially triggering matchup against the Warriors looms, and trade rumors are afoot. Next on First to the Floor.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, layup off the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Garnett, knocked away.
Hey, welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. I'm Ben Vallis. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Joining us, our feet on the ground over there in the USA, it's Wayne Spooney. Spoons, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. 7 in a row feels pretty good. But I thought it was, you caught me off guard with the we're actually beating bad teams. But I had seen a stat recently. We were like 16-6 against teams over 500 and 15-6 against teams under 500. So, I mean, it's true. Like,
I'm glad to hear that.
We're as good. We play the same against everybody. It doesn't matter who you are.
It was a very poorly researched comment, so I'm glad that you're able to back it up for me, Spoons. Also with us, the Chris Forsberg to Derek White's Time Lord, Jake Eisenberg. How are you, man?
Yeah. So true. The mistress is on a tear, and I am also feeling good. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing well. It's down in Tassie, solo parenting with my toddler. A couple of plane flights alone. Always a potential disaster. But I'm back. She's back in daycare. I'm finally diving back into the seas. Feeling good. So happy to get back into this. So look, let's just get right into it. We are just beyond the halfway point of the season. It's been a wild, exhilarating ride so far with all of these little sub-narratives that emerge along the way. But perhaps you've been busy lately like I have and haven't had a chance to stop and take a look at the numbers. So we're going to do that right now, take a second and sort of summarize them for you here. So the Celtics right now, as it currently stands, number 1 offense, 117.8 offensive rating. Number 7 defense, 111.2 defensive rating. Of course, that leaves us with the top net rating at 6.7. First in assist to turnover ratio. First in defensive rebounding percentage, which if you've been following the C's for any period of time, like longer than this season, that will maybe be the stat that jumps off the page the most. Absolutely shocking. First in opponent points off turnovers at 15.2. A record, 33-12. That's a 7.733 winning percentage, and we're 14-4 against the top 12 teams in the league. Guys, Spoonie, we'll start with you. Do any of those numbers jump off the page to you? What stands out the most? Or is there something new that wasn't mentioned that you want to introduce?
No, I think obviously the number 1 in net rating is important. In the top 10 in both offense and defense, as my cat's tail makes an appearance here.
Are we hitting the bingo early today?
Yeah. I think for me is first in assist to turnover ratio. This team, notably was a little turnover heavy in the playoffs. And that's probably the biggest thing people talk about as a knock on Tatum and more so Brown. And really, it's not like anyone other than Smart is averaging a ton of assists, but just fundamentally as a team, that number says to me, they're moving the ball. They're moving it in dangerous positions, right? Because it's actually turning into assists. You'll see sometimes these teams have mediocre assist numbers, but they have like the most passes in the league. Well, you're just like popping around the perimeter. The Celtics are not doing that. They're driving into the paint. They're dropping it in the post. They're kicking out to open shooters and they're making shots. And most importantly, they're turning it over a normal amount of times, right? Not some crazy amount, especially when you're, acceptable amount of times. And when you're passing the ball and playing that fast offensive, like, it's not crazy if you have a lot of turnovers. Like, I think often those Steph Warriors teams were like top 5 in number of turnovers because of how quick they played offense. So that assist to turnover ratio is just so beautiful, man.
Yeah. The national media doesn't have anything to write about the Jays when they're moving the ball like this. Like, how are they going to call them selfish when they're number 1 in assist to turnover ratio? Even with apparently Jaylen Brown kind of going back and forth with remembering how to dribble. It's very obvious when you watch the Celtics. The fact that they're 1 is so amazing. I think it speaks to not only Tatum and Jaylen's commitment to moving the ball and buying into the system, but also the way that Brad Stevens has built the roster. And yes, my guy Derek White being right in the middle of that, outside of outside of Smart, I think is one culprit for getting those numbers up. But for me, the number is 14-4 against the top 12 teams. It's an absurd record against the top two teams, and two of those losses are against the Cavs in overtime. One of which was a 40-point Karis LeVert, just ridiculous step back
anomaly.
No question, anomaly. If they were able to take care of business against some of those worst teams, like their record would be 65 win plus pace. But the fact that they're 14-4 against the top 12 teams speaks to what I think as the best team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. They get up for these games, and it's like there's now a big enough sample size that they've demonstrated that. For me, this is pretty smooth brain, but it's the record, 33-12, and more specifically, the winning percentage, .733. So it took a bit of time to look back at prior dominant Celtics teams, and there's not a lot that have had a 733 or above winning percentage, or really even in that neighborhood. It's very limited. So I'm going to run down the list here. 2008, 2009 Celtics, they had a .756 winning percentage. They had a record to finish the season 62-20. 07-08, we all remember that season very fondly. They had a .805 winning percentage, which is pretty dominant. Ended up with the title. 66-16 record there. And then all the way back, the 85-86 Celtics that had a .817 winning percentage, 67-15, and of course won the title. And the magic number for a 60-win season is the .7317 winning percentage, and we're above that right now. So we're on pace again after a little faltering there for a little while in that sort of Pacers magic range of the season. There, we're back on board for the 60-win pace and aligning ourselves with title teams of Celtics past. So this is really promising, and I'm starting to get a little excited here, guys. Not my normal flavor, as you know me. I'm kind of a neurotic fan and always expect the worst to happen. Like, do you expect, Jake, the Celtics to win a title this season? I know that's a tough question, and like we believe in like jinx energy and stuff like that, so I'll accept almost any answer with all of that taken into account. But I mean, it'd be crazy not to at this point, right?
Yeah, I won't express quite how confident you appeared when we hung out in real life before the Warriors game last time.
That was offline, man.
Off the record. I think expecting the team is a very strong word when winning an NBA championship. If the Celtics were to win a title, like, it would still be that this team would kind of still be a bit of an anomaly as far as like the types of teams that win, especially in the modern era. Like, outside of the 06 Heat, teams like their best player winning a title under the age of 26 is basically unheard of, or not having a LeBron or a Steph on your team over kind of the last 10 plus years doesn't really happen. That being said, they are the best team in the league. I think you look at the profiles of all the other teams, like how many, I don't think any of them can kind of say that they're top five in both categories. I know the Celtics defense is 7th overall on the year, but you kind of filter out that first month and they're top 5. Teams that are number 1 in offense, and the fact that they're still number 1 in offense and they haven't been able to hit a 3-pointer, for what feels like 2 months now, is so impressive and goes back to that assist turnover ratio. They are the best team in the league. And not only that, like the more abstract, existential, intangible aspect of the team that I think is underrated is how battle tested they are. And I had a look at this today. I ran it for all East, top 5 East Conference contenders: Celtics, Bucks, Nets, Cavs, Sixers. Total playoff games played across the best fives for each team. So, Tatum, Jalen, Marcus, Al, and Rob have played 430 playoff games. The next closest out of the Bucks, Nets, Cavs, and Sixers is the Bucks at 321, Nets at 317, and Sixers at 276. Like, there's just a massive chasm in how many playoff games these guys have played. That speaks to how Embiid's never been out of the second round. The Cavs have played 57. Like, there's just no experience on that team. KD's carrying the Nets at 155. But the fact that Tatum and Jalen and Marcus all have 70-plus playoff games is absolutely absurd. So, and I think we experienced that in the finals last year when the Warriors were kind of really able to veteran us out of that series. I think that, you kind of can't argue that the Celtics don't have that like championship medal at this point. So when you think about expecting this team to win, they have the talent, they have the depth, they have the experience. It will be disappointing, obviously, if they don't win the title, because I think they're the betting favorite. They are the best team, but it's really hard. It's really hard to win a title.
I mean, so say maybe the Celtics are like a 1-in-4 chance to win the title, which is ridiculously good and ridiculously high. That means 3 out of 4 times they don't win the title, right? So I try to keep that in my mind. Like, it's actually highly more likely they don't win, even if you're the large favorite to win the title. That's how hard it is to win in the NBA, man. Like, especially where the league is right now, I'm not even sure there's an easy first round series at this point. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Hawks, like even the Hawks, like Trey gets hot for a couple games. That can we can start.
You've been scared of the Hawks for 2 years now. Give it up, Stoney.
I feel that fear.
Yeah. But like, the Cavs in the second round, the Bucks in the second round, the Nets in the second round, the Heat in the second round would be so annoying. I don't want to. Yeah. So I just think like, I don't expect this team to win a title, but if I'm picking a team who I think has the best chance, I'm picking the Celtics. And obviously, I think it's going to be a really fun ride, but I'm nervous as hell, man. I don't know. Like,
that's why we do this, right? It's
yeah.
So you can catch up and calm each other's nerves every week or a couple of times a week.
And Jake, I do take issue with you saying that teams haven't won with their best player under 26. Derek White's over 26, so the Celtics are good.
There we go.
Hey, you got me there. I can't argue that. It's true. When your best player, D. White, it's true. Best defender in the league right now.
So sorry, Ben. Go ahead. I was just going to summarize and say
I was
terrified.
like, oh, he's got me.
I'm terrified as well. I bring it up. I know it's a stupid sort of basic question, like will they or will they not win the title? But it's dominating my thoughts lately. And I think if you're a Celtics fan of any sort of level of dedication, you're probably thinking the same thing. Like as we do this podcast and as we maintain and even build on our Celtics fandom, you kind of do it with this thought at the back of your mind, like, one of these days they're going to win a title, and like it's going to be so fun to like be so much on the Celtics bandwagon and have been on it for so long when we finally get to that point. And I just can't help but think like we might finally be at that point this season. So it's got me very excited.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
And one thing I will say as well, right? I see if you guys agree. Like I still feel like I wouldn't say scratching the surface, but I still feel like they have a long way to go as far as reaching their ceiling with this roster, especially. And I think Steve Jones on the Dunker Spot, amazing podcast. He often says like an injury can lead to teams finding something they didn't have otherwise. And we can probably get to this, but like the fact that Jalen's gone down, other guys have had to step up. Derek White goes down in the Hornets game. Pritchard has to play again. We're seeing Brogdon go on an absolute tear and give us a taste of like what does that look like if he's able to get closer to 30 minutes come playoff time. Pritchard can still give you 12-13 if the matchup allows it. And then defensively, the trend, like they're still trending. And with seeing the stats of the best versus the best teams versus the worst teams and how they're similar, I think just speaks to how we've become a bit of a flip the switch team. While we're still consistently one of the best teams, we still have that switch to be flipped. Like we're not playing at the rate that we needed to in the back half of last season, which is a good thing. We don't need to be pulling out all the stops. And I love the way they're managing and building for the playoffs with Rob's minutes, where now we can see Rob, he can get to 30 minutes. But we know now we're mixing in Cornet. The way that they're building and finding different things that they can pull on throughout the season that they might have to rely on if someone misses a game here or there in the playoffs, or just different lineups they can rely on. I love the way that they're building towards the playoffs.
Yeah, they're less like they're like a flip the switch team, but they're a dimmer switch, right? And they're just like slowly turning it up until like complete brightness once they hit the playoffs. Because I think I wonder if this is partially, I'm not sure how much Mazzulla could plan this type of stuff, considering he didn't know he was going to be the head coach 2 weeks going into the season. But I really like, maybe it's just the injuries making guys step up, but it has seemed like Pritchard and Cornet these guys are ready to play when they get their opportunity. And I think you got to give some credit to the coaching too, and Stoudemire and the guys on the bed, the bald guy whose name always escapes me.
Ben Sullivan?
Ben Sullivan. Yes.
Nice.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah. They got these guys ready to play, and it's like perfect. I wonder if Jalen could play. I think Jalen would be playing if it were the playoffs too, you know? So it kind of feels like by design, we're kind of slowly like ramping ourselves up.
Absolutely. And meanwhile, Jayson Tatum has completely re-entered the MVP conversation, which is sort of at the precipice of everything we're talking about. It's all led by Jayson Tatum and his ceiling. Third in points per game. Just going to rattle off a few stats for you guys. At 31.1, that's behind Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid. But he averages 1.1 less turnovers per game than both of those guys, which is hugely important, especially, like you mentioned earlier, Spoonie, the rapid pace of the ball movement for the Celtics. Like, that's a significant reduction in turnovers based on how we play. 3-point shooting gradually ticking back up, 36% in the last 5 games. That's not, like, awesome as far as the standard that Tatum has set earlier in his career, but considering where it started, I think that's, I don't know, it's at least worth tracking in this context. And then his impact on half-court offense. So per cleaning the glass, the Celtics are a +8 in points per play in half-court, in the half-court offense when Tatum is on the court. Hugely important because, you know, huge part of last year, obviously, the defensive identity, but the scoring opportunities created off of the turnovers that we were forcing. For Tatum to be so impactful and such a plus for the Celtics in half-court offensive possessions, I think is huge for his MVP case and just the overall success of this team. He's 5th in 538's Raptor stat. He's 3rd in Basketball Index's LeBron stat. Jokic is 1st in both, so maybe this is a waste of time. Like, Jokic is obviously the clear front-runner, Spoonie, but like, how likely is Tatum to win MVP, I suppose, based on the team's overall success? Like, that's sort of the standout category there for Tatum.
Yeah, I think if Jokic is the Celtics in this metaphor, Tatum's like the Nets or something, where it's like, okay, you know, if I got to pick one team out of the field, you know, it might be that team, right? He's kind of come up and down as the season's gone on, but he's on a complete hot streak right now. And one thing I've noticed with Tatum is I was just kind of looking at a lot of his layups and dunks for something I'm writing. He gets so many layups and dunks off of like when he's the screener and backdoor cuts, rolling to the rim as the roll man out of pick and rolls. Just reading the defense when he's going to set a pin down and leaving the pin down early before he makes contact and getting wide open layups. And we'll talk about this a little bit. He's one of the best post players in the NBA. So when he's averaging 8.5 free throws a game now too. Like, what do you do with this guy? Like, how do you defend him? Everything we wanted from him off ball, he's done it. The only thing you can kind of knock him for, and I'm not going to say playmaking because I think just the way we play won't lead to him having a lot of assists, but he's moving the ball. He's making the right play. It's like his shooting isn't elite anymore, but it's still pretty good, especially considering the types of threes he takes, man. So it's like, how do you stop this guy? And then the flip side, I do not believe any of these defensive stats that say Jokic is one of the best defensive players in the league. I'm sorry. I just will never believe it. Let me see him play elite defense in the playoffs because it is not going to happen. Meanwhile, Tatum's locking up Kevin Durant and Giannis, you know, and he's just playing absurdly great defense through 4 rounds of the playoffs while also being a dude. You can't stop him on offense anymore. Even when he has a bad game, he still gets 30 somehow.
It's a great question, Spoonie. I don't know how you stop him because I tell you who doesn't know the answer to that question is all of Charlotte Hornets. All of the whole team.
Top to bottom, the entire organization.
The Carolinas, as a geographical place, do not have an answer for Jayson Tatum. That was just an absurd performance. That was honestly one of the best games I've seen him play. Just like the decision making, how quickly he's attacking, and I think there's an element to the staying in the same place. Like from a rest point of view, he seemed especially spry relative to the Nets game, coming off a back-to-back and 3 games in 4 nights. It's top to bottom. I think one thing as well that, and again, this guy's 24 years old, and the fact that he's improved. He's taken a serious jump this year. I would say this is probably the biggest I was gonna say he's taken so many freaking big leaps. But this is another really, really big leap. Like to go from he was 15th last year in free throw attempts per game. He's 6th this year.
It's crazy.
That's crazy. So so 2 more made free throws per game. That was basically the difference between averaging 28 and 30 points per game. And that's been a stat that's been climbing every year of his career. Kind of coinciding with the fact that he's just getting bigger and stronger every year. The post play, Udoka ball kind of brought that in last year, the bully ball. And he's been, I knew he'd been good in the post, but to see that 98th percentile stat was, I definitely had been underrating him a little bit. And then one more piece, like he's added the floater, but that's still got a long way to go.
Yes.
And I have no reason to believe it. Like it is literally the first year he's like kind of been taking 1 to 2 per game. So that honestly, that might even be something that comes together later in the season. Cause I feel like we've seen that with Tatum in the past as the season goes along. And you talk about the shooting efficiency. Now is kind of the time. Now is kind of the time when all the threes
it's beginning to happen.
They start to
Based
go
off
in.
one game.
Last of one game. But this is the time. And if the threes, like if he just is making 1 more 3 per game, then he might just win the MVP based on that. That being said, Jokic is doing just like sicko stuff. Like I think my favorite stat, he had 14, 11, and 16. He took 5 shots and was 100, 100, 100. It's just like whatever. Just gonna take 5 shots today and win by 20. It's not a big deal. He's 20th in the league in scoring though. That's
what a
not
bum!
impressive.
You can't give this guy the NBA,
Yeah,
MVP. Come on.
Yeah, the voter fatigue is probably
real.
That's our friend.
Seems, but
Yes,
listening to a lot of these like national podcasts like Simmons and Zach Lowe and stuff, it kind of seems to have dropped off a little bit. I know that's only two people, but I feel like I haven't heard much about that, and I feel like the Jokic propaganda, it's just people have had to just like give it up because he's just been like on another level this year.
Yeah, he really has elevated himself even beyond what he already won MVP for twice. So maybe this conversation is a waste of time, but you can't ignore the team's success and how just absolutely spearheaded that is by Jayson Tatum. That has to be factored into the MVP voting. Jordan Bedard in the comments saying that Tatum free throw attempts, which you guys mentioned, but also Jalen's free throw percentage. When we were playing Celtics bingo in our playback watch parties earlier in this year, Jalen front rimming his first free throw attempt was one of the squares on our bingo board. And I think we have to consider removing that now because it's
I don't know.
Wait for the playoffs.
I don't know. He missed 4 in a row. Or was it 3 in a row in that one game? I'm thinking.
I think it's 4. I think you're right.
It was 4. It was. So I don't know.
Have you rest, JB. But just on Tatum quickly before we move on. Bill Simmons has this category of players where he refers to them as like, what do you do? Players, and Jokic is firmly in that category. I think Giannis is as well. It's probably fair to say that Tatum is like well and truly in that category at this point. I know that the Hornets are not like a premier team in any way, no matter how you slice it. They suck at everything. So of course, a guy like Tatum is going to perform well against them. But another thing I'd like to hear you guys take on is people called that 51-point performance by Tatum sort of a boring 50, a slow and not entertaining 50. The ease at which he got there, I found to be exhilarating. Like I had goosebumps because that's what you want. Like you don't want this sort of like insane, like playing 45 minutes, like balls to the wall, gutsy, pushing your body beyond its limit, all your effort to get to 51. You just want a nice, cool, jacking up some threes to go in for a change, which is nice. Walk your way to 51 points. That's nice. And to me, that's exciting. Jake, what do you think about that? That 51 performance was boring.
Yeah, I think that it speaks to the leap that he's taken and free throws being a part of that as well. He had 14 from 14, I think, from the line. He made it look way, way too easy. I didn't think he had any shot of getting to 50, really. He had like 38 kind of like midway through the fourth quarter. The Hornets look that they suck on defense, but they got some serious offensive firepower especially when they're playing the Celtics. As far as boring 50-point games go, I think that you're right. Like you don't want it to be 50 minutes overtime. And this I think speaks to Tatum and how well he fits in any team context. he was really sharing the ball really well. Like it wasn't like let's give it to Tatum and let him dominate. Like let's let him cook. It was still catch and shoots, coming off cuts. Spoonie talking about getting dunks at the rim. It was just a well balanced game, and I think that's kind of who Tatum has become now. He lets the game come to him, and when it's rolling, he just goes from like 33, 35 to 50.
Boring. Lest we forget, this was a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. We needed at least like 45 of those 51 points. Like this, when Tatum like went absolutely bananas and took the game over and made it a laugher, that was like with 4 minutes left in the game. That game was like pretty close for the first half of the fourth quarter. I don't think him dropping 51, maybe the last 2 threes, it was kind of like, all right, dude. Yeah, you're just kind of rubbing it in. But for the most part, like 45 of those points were like necessary to win that game. So I didn't think it was boring. And as Jake was saying, like he did it all. Drives to the rim out of the pick and roll. Post up, fall away, Kobe style. Post up, spin off a shoulder, dunk on your head. Backdoor cuts. Burying 7 of 12 from 3. 14 free throws because he was tacking the rim so hard. And he had 5 assists. He was moving the ball. He was making the right play. Like, I don't know. Charlotte's still an NBA team. Like, they still beat people. Jalen McDaniels is a really good defensive player, even if, LaMelo is absolutely laughably bad to the point where we need to start thinking about how we're talking about him as a player because he is so laughably bad on defense. But everyone's saying McDaniels is like all defense level guy. Like, well, Tatum just cooked him for 51. Like that's a big deal, And Plumlee's, Plumlee's not a bad rim protector either. So yeah, they're a bad defense, but I don't know, man. He makes it look easy. It is not easy, and that was a close game in the fourth quarter. So I was not bored. I was like laughing maniacally as he hit those threes to end the game. And I was like, I said, this is awesome to my wife, and she's like, is our kid awake yet?
Yeah. Well, the game was on at 5 a.m. here in Sydney, and I'm watching it on my laptop in bed. My wife is asleep next to me, and I'm like vibrating while watching the game to the point where my wife is like, what is going on with you? Like, can you please stop? I'm trying to sleep here. You just keep shuffling around. You keep like shaking with every miss, with every block, with every awesome event of the game. I can't help but have this physical reaction to it. I should have gone downstairs. I suppose there's a summary there. Yeah, Landon Lakes in the chat. Rozier's post-game outfit greater than JT's 51. Shout out to everyone in the chat here. We've got a nice little group here as we live stream this podcast. Guys, let's move on. Per Shams Charania, Jakob Poeltl has drawn significant interest from the Celtics, and here's a relevant extract from the Shams article, which you can find on The Athletic. He says, however, one organization emerges every deadline as a key hub for the entire NBA. This season, it could be San Antonio. Spurs center Jakob Poeltl has gained significant trade interest from teams such as the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics, according to league sources who, like all other sources in this story, were granted anonymity so that they could be able to speak freely, which I don't know if he often tacks that onto his articles. I think that was assumed. Weird. Nonetheless, Jake, Jakob Poeltl, yay, nay, is it likely to happen? Would you be in support of it if it did happen?
How have we been talking about Jakob Poeltl this much this year? This is wild. I'm actually wearing my Ninja Turtles shirt, so there you go.
Relevant, super relevant.
Maybe it's a thing. But Shams has not been right about anything about the Celtics since Brad Stevens has come to power. So I would be, and also just in general, all of Brad Stevens' moves have kind of come out of nowhere. So I would be very surprised if this happens for a variety of reasons. One, giving up assets for a guy that will almost certainly leave in free agency unless they decide to pay Poeltl instead of Grant. The idea of them paying Grant and Poeltl at like somewhere between 15 and 18 million for both of them seems pretty unlikely unless I know Wick has some crazy investment cooking this season. And I'm not even sure if Jakob Poeltl can play past like the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs. Can't shoot free throws. He's okay in switch defenses. Like he's really good. Like if we traded for Jakob Poeltl and all we gave up was Gallo and Pritchard, like the Celtics would be better. Like no question. Like he's a really good rim protector, but I just don't think it's a need, and I don't think that it's something that's going to happen.
Yeah, good to great rim protector, good pick and roll finisher, not Rob level, but yeah, solid, probably better than Al at this point in his career. He doesn't want to be a backup. He's not going to sign with the team. Even if we offer him the money, he's not going to sign with the team to be the backup. He can't play with Rob Williams, so you're extremely limited when you're healthy on lineups he can play with. Al's not going to be here forever. I would absolutely look, and we talked about this before. We really only have like one more move we can make with the ammo in the war chest, right? That move needs to replace Al Horford, in my opinion, or replace Grant Williams, because then Grant will replace Al Horford's spot. Poeltl is basically a Rob Williams replacement, and which I understand Rob gets injured. But look, if we don't have Rob in the Eastern Conference Finals and instead have Jakob Poeltl, I don't love our chances. Like Rob is this point is like paramount to this team's ceiling and being a championship contender. Like I think we can survive the first and second round without him, which I think you're right, Jake, is when Poeltl will be helpful. But we could probably survive that with Luke Cornett if we have to and run an Al at center. So depending on the matchup. So I just think like if you're targeting one last guy with that Gallo contract and Pritchard and like 2 first-round picks, you better know he's here through the Jays prime. And I would prefer he be a position of need, right? That big wing position that we don't really have other than Grant Williams once Al retires. So I like Poeltl as a player. I do not like him for the Celtics.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're only trading for Poeltl if you're operating under the assumption that Rob Williams is going to miss time and possibly significant time. And if that's the case, like you're unlikely to win a title
right
anyway at that point. So you may as well not make the trade, not give up those assets, and just recoup and have another go at it next season as well. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I found multiple opinions and thoughts on this. We can't trade Gallo back to the Spurs because they waived him within the past 12 months. Yes, this is the reaction I'm getting from people.
Yes,
what are you thinking there, Jake?
Part of being part of Celtics blog is that we get access to Keith Smith's legendary cat brain, and he said that they did change a rule that would make it possible, but no one's done it yet. And it's like, okay, guys, we kind of changed the rule, but if you do something dodgy, like then we'll have to change the rule again. So
yeah,
I don't know if I don't think that this would fall under like don't do something dodgy kind of rule. Like right?
I wonder if it's like so you can't. I don't know. Would it even be dodgy? Like you waive a guy, let the other team pick him up, and then later they trade him back to you, and you get like assets out of it for like helping your buddy out or something. That's that's strange, but
yeah,
cool.
So,
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yes,
Glad to be able to report the facts there, listener.
Yeah,
so the
awesome.
price,
I didn't know that.
If that is the case, then the price could be as high as Pritchard and 2 firsts. If under some maybe poor assumption on my part that we can't trade Gallo, looks like maybe we can. Either way, if we're starting to throw first-round picks in for a guy like you guys have already said that can't play beyond a certain point in the playoffs, is really just a reliever that Luke Cornett already does well enough. Like he's just adequate, and that's what you need at that position. Just not worthwhile.
Look at what Brad Stevens has gotten for first-round picks so far. He's gotten Al Horford for 1 first-round pick, Malcolm Brogdon for 1 first-round pick, and Derek White for a first-round pick and a swap. If you think he's trading a first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl, you're out of your bloody mind.
3 guys that can definitely play big minutes in the finals. Like
question, would you prefer to have those 3 guys for 3 first-round picks, or DeJounte Murray for 3 first-round picks?
Oh, dude, the former, 1,000%.
It's just crazy how much better he's done with all those picks versus some of these other teams.
It's nuts, dude. It's nice when you already have the 2 stars, though, right? Like, Atlanta needs the second star. I don't think Murray's the guy, but like that's the beauty of how that team with Danny drafting the 2 Jays. It's like, okay, now I just got to get really good players next to him.
Easy.
Yeah, no big deal. I mean, he's done amazing. I'm not trying to take anything away from Brad, but
then Poeltl off the table. And then sort of keeping in line with Sham saying that the Spurs could be that hub as far as the trade market this season, are there any other notable Spurs targets that you guys have in mind that you think, because we've done the dance with the Spurs before, there's obviously good relations between the two front offices. Do you think there's a trade there for someone else on the Spurs roster?
If we could somehow bring back Josh Richardson, that would be unreal. Like he was really good for the Celtics. Like I think that Derek White was more of what we needed. Richardson's really good, can shoot it, a little bit of playmaking, fits into the defensive identity of the team. So if we were able to get him, but I think he's on like 12-ish mil. So I think then now you're talking about adding in so it's like Gallo, Pritchard, and then now we're talking about a Hauser that goes back. And again, Richardson's a free agent as well. So I don't know. And
I'll say it for you, Ben. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, mate. Go rip in.
How about Zach Collins, Ben? Yeah. Would you be interested in Zach Collins?
I was literally just Googling his contract.
Yeah. Oh, it works. It works very easily.
Yeah. Does it fit into a TPE for us? Because we do have soon to expire a $6.9 million TPE on the 18th of January. That's very soon. Like
he's
tomorrow.
7'3".
Okay.
So it does not fit.
Okay, right. You answered my question. That's a shame. Is Zach Collins, is he a potential ad, do you think, despite that?
Zach Collins terrifies me, man, because he's so injury prone. But, man, he looked good against us in our game against the Spurs, didn't he? And, like, he kind of brings the type of stuff Poetl does just at a lower level. I don't know if he can shoot free throws, actually. But if Collins comes cheap, I would definitely consider it because you probably don't have to give up picks or, give up a first round pick. And then if you need to, you can just use his salary slot to trade for somebody else, if it doesn't work out or he gets hurt again, and you can deal him with the 2 picks. You don't lose the salary slot like you do if you get Poetl and he walks in the offseason, right? Because Collins, I think, has 1 more year left on his deal.
Right. Well, he certainly performed well. I know Eric Weiss called me out on Twitter a little while ago for even having the thought that we should acquire Zach Collins, but when he's healthy, he looks good. But the when he's healthy qualifier, I think we're already prefixing too many current rostered players on the Celtics with that. So, adding another one, I understand the hesitation to do that. Josh Richardson, I don't know if he fits. Like, obviously there's a need at the wing there. We've had some people in the chat calling that out. I don't know if as far as his, I'll say it, physical dimensions, if he sort of fits what we need there from a wing. Thank you. Knock that off your bingo card. Yeah, Devin Vassell is another player that could be gettable, although he might.
I love that. There's no way we're getting Devin Vassell. We might as well trade for OG.
Yeah, I'll just.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Jake, tell us about your OG thoughts.
That's my guy. I mean, like you talk about, replacing Al. I'm not sure if Grant is going to keep getting incrementally better. Look, replacing Al is going to be just hard. You're going to do it more with how good the rest of the team becomes, the Jays, Rob, etc. Like Al Horford's value, like finding a guy that's become what Al has become, especially even in his late career. I'm not sure Grant's going to fully be able to fit that. But if I don't know, like Masai Ujiri's got everybody in his pocket. Whether it's Zach Lowe, it's Shams, like multiple first round picks. That's how much it's going to take to get OG. I threw out a trade of, this is pre-Brogdon turning into the 6th man of the year without a question, Brogdon. The Grant, Brogdon, Pritchard, 2 first round picks for OG, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying we should do it, but I'm saying we should potentially have a Jake's always right. Thank you, Landon. 2 + 2, it's a lot. We should have a meeting about it. Should we do it? I'm not sure. I just think that he is someone that would really take this team. Like if you inserted him, especially for this year, it's both a win now. He's locked up for 3 more years. Win now move and a move for down the line. You don't have to deal with Grant Williams' contract. OG's making $17 million per year, which is probably going to be a little more or around what Grant ends up making anyway. So you lose Grant, but then it's like how much value is, because it would have to be a Brogdon or a Derek White for someone like OG. And I just don't know how much you're losing for how much you're gaining. I think that there's a lineup there which would turn the Celtics into maybe the best defensive 5 in the league. Like to have a Marcus, Derek, Jayson, OG, Rob lineup. Sorry, Jalen. It would be absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Real quick on Vassell. He's averaging 24 and 4
Yeah,
on
no, it's
40%
crazy.
3-point
Oh,
shooting.
come
He's
on,
averaging
that's
more
dream.
points than OG, and he's 3 years younger. But
No, he's a star.
there's very few relatively gettable guys I would be interested in trading Grant Williams for. But yeah, OG Anunoby, call it in right now. That team would be such a defensive monster with OG Anunoby on the court, dude. Like, I don't know how you score on that team. And then you got Derek White flying in from the weak side, blocking every shot, like there's no getting to the rim. So yeah, OG would be incredible. I have no idea where the Raptors are going to go. Mm-hmm. They could go in about 10 different directions. They could use OG or some of their younger guys and try to trade for an all-star and try to get better immediately. Like, I think that's just as logical as them blowing it up. So I just have no clue what they're going to do. But man, if there's even a sniff OG's available, yeah, I think, Jake, you got to have that meeting and you got to put a real tangible offer on the table because he's that good. He really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Z Gamer just correcting me. 24-25 season is a player option, so you might only get him for one more season until you are now visiting the free agency thing. So that is definitely something to consider. Would be part of the conversation. Would be part of the meeting.
Exactly.
Mitchell Marshall in the chat here. Semi is the only answer at this point. I was actually thinking about Semi the other day. A couple of my friends from work who were watching the Euro League and Shemi was playing, and I was like, has he learned to dribble yet? No, was the answer.
So, I was gonna say, yeah, can we make trades with the Beijing Ducks?
Yeah.
Well, look, the trade deadline, February 9th, it's obviously approaching, so we're going to be
coming.
We're going to be picking at that wound a little bit. I wish I had a better analogy there as we approach that deadline. Meanwhile, this Thursday night, our old foes, the Golden State Warriors, they're in town. They're re-equipped, if you will, with a now healthy Stephen Curry. Before we get into the game, we are going to fire up our playback room for a good old-fashioned watch party. You can find the link in the show notes for this podcast or after the fact on YouTube or wherever you're consuming it. I will put the link in there. So come in, hang out, watch the game with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, different result from the last time. Jake, I'm understandably nervous about this one. The Warriors, we know they have a terrible record on the road this season. How have they been playing lately as we get closer to this Boston game?
Yeah, so Steph has been back for 4 games. They're 2-2. They kind of pulled one out yesterday. It looked like they were going to lose. But yeah, Steph had 41, 7 and 2 in the W. You got to just throw out everything. The Warriors may end up being a disappointment this year, but for specifically Friday's game, it's going to be Steph's going to turn up. He's going to probably have 40. I think the big thing that I like, the win-loss thing, obviously you want the Celtics to win and go to 8 in a row. Can Tatum just deal with the house of horrors that have become the Warriors? Like Andrew Wiggins, again, he's coming back from injury. He has not been good defensively, home or away a lot of the time. He's going to look like Scottie Pippen, it feels like, on Friday, right?
I know.
So win-loss, I would just like to see them play the way they are clearly capable of playing this season, especially Tatum. I would like to see him get the monkey off his back a little bit. I'm nervous. I'm gonna have playoff kind of nerves probably before this one. Even today, Draymond, an article on ESPN came out about the Boston crowd and what he heard. You can go read that one, and how he wasn't ready for the crowd, etc. So he's going to be coming in with his Draymond chip on his shoulder. I very much expect. I'm hoping for some Grant, Draymond kerfuffles, some crowd interactions. Keep it clean if you go into the game, obviously. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. They've got 2 days off as well, so they're going to be pretty much full strength.
That blank stare Tatum had while we were playing the Warriors earlier this season of just I have no idea what I'm doing right now, will forever haunt my dreams. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. I don't care if he misses shots, but don't look out of sorts, dude. If you go 7 of 19, but it's quick decisions, 1 turnover, and he's just missing open shots, fine. That's fine. But I just can't deal with him looking completely flabbergasted against the Warriors again. Ben, are you terrified? Tell me you're terrified.
Petrified.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a mental hurdle for the players. It's now a mental hurdle for fans of the team as well. At any level, I think there's a trauma, a recent trauma with the NBA Finals. There's a more limited, acute trauma with the game we played that Jake and I caught up at a Sydney pub and watched, and unfortunately colored our experience of catching up for the first time poorly. There's a lot to recover from everyone within the realm of the Celtics, and so it's a hugely important game. There's probably less than 10 really significant regular season games throughout the course of each season, and this is up there with the most important of them, because we grasp at what this team's identity is and where they're going, and with what they can improve on, and this is a huge measuring stick for where they're at and where they're going. So it's almost must win in terms of maintaining the belief of what this team can do, and that's why we're firing up the playback room, not to continue to plug it, but I need a support system to watch this game. And so that's why we're doing it. So I highly recommend coming to hang out. If the game isn't entertaining, then at least hopefully my reaction to it will be. So definitely tap in and check that out. Jake, any final thoughts on the game before we move on?
Firstly, Jordan in the chat, has the term Grantix been coined yet? That is fantastic.
So good.
We're coining it today. Thank you, Jordan. Could definitely go for some Grantix in Friday's game. Let's just turn up. And look, they could just lay the smackdown too. I feel like they looked really fresh against the Hornets on the most recent game. Obviously, Tatum looked fantastic. Let's hope that this is the beginning of the 3-ball, just being one of those games. Brogdon, keep it going. We haven't seen Brogdon was awful in the Warriors game as well. Let's see him get going. We didn't have Rob in the last game, so in the finals, we had a positive plus minus with Rob on the court. We have Robert Williams available, coming off 2 days of rest. Let's see what we can do with a healthy Rob. Let's get a blocked 3-pointer on Steph Curry going back the other way for a Rob windmill. Yeah.
Smart's going to have to make his threes, because Landon and in the chat, you're spot on. Tatum's going to get doubled, and they're going to leave Marcus Smart open. That's what they did in the first game. They're just going to dare him to shoot. So Marcus has got to be ready to play, and I think he will be. I wonder if we go double bigs. The Warriors are tough to go double bigs against. So I wonder if that's Joe's been going with that. So I wonder, do you guys think we're going to keep the double bigs going?
I do think that they're going to just try and go back to that starting lineup, which I like. But yeah, when we saw bits of it, watching Al chase over screens is funny to watch. He's pretty good at it, all things considered, age, size, but not something you really want him doing. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Honestly, I would maybe prefer him to go back to maybe putting Grant in there and just going back to more of a switch everything thing with Curry out there. But we'll see.
It's going to be interesting, and tune in one more time, one more plug, the playback stream. We're going to be watching it.
I'm so keen. I've got it blocked out in the work calendar. It's awesome.
I've got the whole day off work. Cannot wait.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Nice.
Now, final segment here. This segment is a Wayne Spooney original invention named Celtics Face-Off. Spooney, do you want to set the table for this one?
Yeah, so I we're always kind of batting ideas around in our chat, trying to think of recurring segments, stuff that makes our lives a little bit easier. And I was thinking that the Celtics have a lot of talent and a lot of guys with overlapping, in a good way, skill sets. So I think it'd be kind of a fun way to discuss these skill sets a little differently, maybe focus on some really specific things that we don't always talk about in detail, right? We might mention it, but we don't ever sit here and talk about Marcus and Derek White navigating screens, right? And I just thought it would be fun if we pitted two players against each other and picked a skill and chose which one of those guys is better at that specific skill. And I think we've gotten creative. I think there's some fun ones, some funny ones, and then also, a couple more serious ones. So yeah, it's just, if
very
it's terrible, just remember Ben thought of this.
That's right. And if it was great, obviously it was Spoonie.
Yes, of course.
So I think we've got 2 each in there. As I've failed to calculate the amount of rows and a table. The first one, Marcus Smart versus Derek White. Screen navigation. Jake, is this your entry to the?
This is my entry.
Table? All right, you want to kick us off here?
This is what I imagine it's like choosing between children, because okay, so Marcus, my favorite thing about his screen navigation is how he's mastered going under a screen with that like Cobra spin move, like under, and like he doesn't really go under because he's able to get a contest so well. Whereas I think Derek White is so good at going over screens. Like he's always able to get a really, really good contest going over screens. And this really big, like the reason I had this one in my mind was like Malcolm Brogdon tried to do like the Marcus Smart spin move under a screen and against the Nets, and it was like 4 times as slow. Just made me really appreciate it, how it's like probably like really hard to do. I think I'm going with Marcus. I'm going with Marcus just because I love his spin move under the screen so much.
Spoonie is nodding like that Jack Nicholson gif right now. Slow. Insane nod.
Yeah, I think they navigate screens very differently. Like White is like a ghost, man. Like you can't land a firm screen on him. He just like uses his hips and gets around him. And I think it's slight edge to Derek on off-ball chasing shooters when people try to screen him. But I think a pretty sizable advantage to Marcus Smart in the pick and roll at the point of attack. And I think that's frankly just a little more important in today's NBA. You feel Marcus Smart if you try to screen him. Like he goes under and he reappears on the other side somehow. And then if you try to reset the screen, he just like somehow gets his body in between the screener and like makes them like almost turn their shoulder because he hits him so hard and gets around him. And a sneaky underrated thing Marcus might be the best in the league at. Nobody gets fouled going around a screen as much as like Marcus draws so many offensive fouls when he's navigating screens. And like once in a while he'll take a dive and it won't get called and it looks really, really bad. But more often than not, he gets that call. Plus, both of these guys, you can't screen, but Jake, it's funny. I kind of pre-wrote some of the post for Celtics blog for this episode, and I said the exact same thing. This is like picking between children. Yes, I would say this is really close, and but I would go Marcus as well.
Yeah, Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
No. Go Ben. Make the call.
I took a different angle on this, and spoiler alert, Spoonie already told me that one of these stats is useless in our Slack before we got started, but I think listeners will appreciate understanding why that is the case. So I had a look at NBA hustle stats and specifically contested shots with the assumption that to contest a shot defending on the perimeter, you first need to get around a screen to contest that shot. So Marcus Smart, 4.4 contests per game. Really great for any guard who's running around screens all day. That's great, right? 4.4, amazing stat. Derek White, 6.1 contests per game. He's getting around those screens. He's a ghost, like you guys said. He's contesting everything, even if just minimally. He's offering maximum effort on the navigation of every screen. So I think Derek White wins there. Another thing I looked at is play type, specifically pick and roll ball handler defending. So defending the pick and roll ball handler. Derek White, 3.4 possessions per game, gives up 0.93 points per possession. Teams are shooting 44% on those looks. Marcus Smart, 3.8 possessions per game, giving up 0.95 possessions per game. Team shooting 46% on those looks. So like a wash. Almost exactly the same, identical. So then to me, it comes down to like the eye test, the aesthetics. Jordan Bedard in the chat mentioned the reverse spin. I think it's Marcus Smart. In terms of like, I know
3-0. Oh, that doesn't feel right.
No. It doesn't feel right, but it's true. It's true. And we're talking about the reigning defensive player of the year. And perhaps the glaring takeaway is that it's just so good that it's this close. That it's almost give or take. And as far as a defensive, identity riddled championship potential team, that is an amazing trait to have. So if nothing else is taken from this segment, it's that we have two amazing perimeter defenders and they're almost as good as one another, which is great.
It's pretty cool having two of those guys. That's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Next one, Jalen versus Jayson versus Brogdon. pull-up threes. Whose pull-up three game are you taking over the other two, Spoonie?
Okay. If we're going just this season,
Yeah.
I haven't looked at numbers recently, but I believe both the Jays are like barely 30% on pull-up threes. Yeah, in the 20s now, apparently. So that's not good. I don't know what Brogdon is, but it feels like he never misses them. So I'm guessing he's probably in the 40s from pull-up threes. I think both the Jays and especially Tatum can get to that shot a lot cleaner whenever they need it against a lot of different types of defensive players, which I think is a huge boon for them. And if we were going next year or from now going forward, who I would take, that's a different discussion. But right now, I just think the gulf in efficiency is so big for Malcolm Brogdon at this point. I would have to go Brogdon with a heavy heart.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Brogdon for this year. You just trust it so much now, and I'm still not quite used to his shot just in general, how funky it looks. But yeah, he's become so reliable on that pull up three, and then the numbers with Jayson and Jalen are pretty close with the pull up threes, I believe. I personally just I still like Tatum's pull up threes for the most part. Maybe not when he's missed 4 in a row when he has Seth Curry matched up against him, but I still really like the Tatum pull up three. Jalen, I think it's more new for Jalen. I think he's still finding that at the same level, but that's how I would have it ranked.
Yeah, I did look up the numbers.
Thank
Tatum,
you.
27.5% on the season, pull up threes, not great, but high volume, so whatever. Jaylen Brown, 33.3% pull-up threes. Getting there, great, sure. Until you look at Malcolm Brogdon, 43% on pull-up threes. And, of course, the reason he's so open and consistently in such a good position to get those looks is because of the Jays, largely. But in a vacuum, we're looking at their pull-up three stats in this particular case. So for me, it's Malcolm Brogdon. So is that another 3-0?
It is. Yeah, unfortunately. All right, we've got it. Yeah, here we go. Here's one I think we'll disagree on. Ben, do you want me to introduce it so
Please,
you don't have to go last? Okay,
let's go around the room.
Number 3. This is a grudge match, baby. This, I think, is a good one. Al Horford versus Luke Cornett in rim protection. Ben, why don't you go first since you've gone last the last 2 times?
So from this point onwards is where I ran out of time researching these. So I'm just
I have some stats.
from the
I
head
have
now.
some stats
Great.
for this
okay.
one.
Well, we make a good team.
Yeah.
For me, rim protection, factoring in Al Horford's age and what we ask of him, throughout the course of a game elsewhere. Like Cornett is the biggest US-born player in the league right now. Mm-hmm. Like just his presence on the court is some rim protection. You factor in the eclipse, which I believe is a bizarre attempt at rim protection, and just that kind of size around the rim as a deterrent. For me, again, total eye test, not looking at stats here, it's Luke Cornett. What do you think, Jake?
I thought you were going to go to Spoonie next. Okay.
Here. Actually, why don't we go to me? Why don't we go to me?
Yes.
All right, here we go. So Al averages more blocks per game, 0.9 to 0.8. But per 36, Luke's at 2.4 and Al's at 1.1. So way more blocks for minutes played in Luke's favor. But Al contests 5.8 shots per game at less than 6 feet away. Luke, I think, is around 3. For some reason, I didn't grab that. Opponents shoot 2.3% worse with Luke guarding around the rim. They shoot 11.2% worse when Al Horford is defending the shot around the rim. So I think just from a pure volume, it's kind of the same argument you had for Derek White, Ben, just on the interior instead of the outside. Al's defending way more shots. Maybe he's not getting as many blocks, but people don't make shots when Al Horford's at the rim. And Luke does affect shots, blocks some more shots, but Al's impact on layups and close shots is just so crazy that I would go with Horford. And plus, he gets there more often because Luke's a little slow-footed, so sometimes he doesn't even get to contest the shot because he's out of position.
Imagine coming off a screen and beginning your drive and just being immediately captivated by Al Horford's eyes. I would imagine that would have some impact on your ability. Yeah. Oh my God. Exactly. I think that has to be factored in.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Jake, break the tie. We finally have a tie here.
I couldn't possibly dunk on someone with such beautiful eyes. No. I think Al's ability to contain the perimeter a little better as well. So, part of rim protection is stopping people from getting to the rim. So I like that Al has, and granted, he hasn't been as good protecting the rim as he was last year. And the second piece, which is a little, I'm not sure if this is cheating or not. I'm convinced that Al is like still in third, fourth gear.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that when he gets to the playoffs, it's going to be all of these numbers are going to ramp back up. The rim protection, the ability to switch and stay with guys a little better. So I'm betting on, I'm signing the Al Horford contract today because of what he's going to become in the playoffs. Al Horford gets the W today.
All right, Big Al with the win.
I'll take that L. That's fine.
I was going to say, now it feels like Ben also lost.
Suck it, Ben.
That's how it goes.
All right.
Who's going to
go
dish
ahead.
up the next one?
I'll do the next one. So this is Al, he's making a return for the next one here. Versus our Ben's favorite nickname on the team, maybe Fast PP, making an appearance in the Celtics Face-Off in offensive rebounding. Spoonie, throw to you.
So it's kind of comical, but if you look at the numbers, Pritchard averages 1.8 offensive rebounds per 36. Al's at 1.3. Pritchard rebounds more of available offensive rebounds when he's on the court. So his offensive rebounding percentage, 4.7 to Al's 3.8. Pritchard has the luxury of never boxing out, never getting boxed out. So he can just sneak in. And plus he plays a much lower minute load than Horford. So, he can go balls to the wall 100% every time he's out there and dive around for offensive rebounds. Al doesn't have that luxury. So I think this is where the face-off gets tricky. Are we saying like purely from like production, or are we adding some context into that? Like I'm going to say it's funny that it's even a question, though, right? It couldn't be too. We could probably do 3-point shooting with these guys too, and maybe we will next time we do this segment. But I gotta go Al, man. I don't know. I just can't give it to Pritchard. I'm sorry. I'm a hater.
I think like, because if the question is, okay, there's an important possession coming up, maybe someone's at the free throw line and they're a poor free throw shooter and you're expecting a miss, who would you prefer, on the line there, poised to grab the offensive rebound? It's obviously Al Horford all day, but there are certain situations where, and like you said, Spoonie, because he's not boxing out and there's not like he doesn't have to apply like big man rebounding fundamentals. He can sneak in and grab these offensive boards. But if it comes down to like whose offensive rebounding do I want to rely on more, it's obviously Al Horford, right? So props to Pritchard and like what he's doing there, because it's unique for his dimensions as a player. I'll move on. It's got to be Al Horford as far as just reliability around the boards on either end.
Okay. I'm going to try and flip one of you because I can't be. I'm not taking an L. I'm going to get one of you on my side here. It's Pritchard. And my argument is that relative to their perspective position, Pritchard is like an elite. He has been an elite offensive rebounder.
I like that
at guard versus Horford for a 4/5 is. He would got to be in like the bottom 10 percentile for offensive rebounding. So for that reason, and their clutch offensive rebounds, Pritchard so far this year, their energy shifting, as Jordan in the chat has been saying here. So I'm going Pritchard. Going the PP.
I will say, like, I don't think you've fully convinced me, but like if we are gonna sit around here and celebrate Derek White's blocking at the rim as a guard, then why should we not also be equally celebrating Peyton Pritchard's offensive rebounding as a guard. So I will.
It's a good question, Ben. Why aren't we? Why aren't we? You're the one not to
Do it,
celebrate.
Ben. Do it. Dunk on me. Dunk on me. Do it. I know you want to.
In.
I just can't. I can't do it. It's like if I want an offensive rebound, I'm relying on the big man every day. Would I rely more on Al Horford to set Pritchard up for an offensive rebound? Of course, but I think that's deviating from what we're looking at here. So for me, it's still Al Horford, but I appreciate the argument on both sides.
Incredibly compelling argument, Jake, and to the point where you may have turned me. And we're
you left me in Ireland,
yeah. Suck it again, Ben. Let's go. No, I'm sticking with Al.
Fair.
So
I'll take it.
the next one, and this is where we're really going to need help from those in the chat for opinions and helping to sway all of us in any particular direction.
Very important.
Blake Griffin versus Luke Cornett, comedic value on the team. Spoonie, which direction are you going in?
Luke's got the on-court antics, the Stromile Swift, the I can't believe I dunked that. The antlers. But Blake is a legitimate stand-up comedian. He is legitimately funny. He knows how to set up jokes. He knows how to tell jokes. He does it with other professionals. So I think the easy answer is Luke Cornett.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Wild
you had me in the first half.
Cornett's hilarious, dude. I love him.
Yeah.
I think, they're both hilarious. They're both legitimately funny guys. I think you could say.
They really
I'm going
the
Luke.
toughest one in the segment.
Yeah, it might be.
Look, they really complement each other well, right? We had the Cornett game, and then he sets Blake up perfectly for the post game, and that gives him the Cornish game hen nickname. Right. So it's just they're throwing alley oops together comedically. So it is hard to separate the two. But I think what Blake gives us when he does play, and granted, Rob coming back has meant that we're getting a lot less of this. But the antics that Blake gives us when he catches a lob, and everybody in the bench antics that we get off the back of Blake diving on the ground and getting a layup and getting a dunk. I think the flow-on comedic effect that we get, the vibes that he produces from his play on the court, I think I got to give the edge to Blake.
I hate to be the tiebreaker here. For me, it's Luke Cornett, and part of the reason is that Blake Griffin has full-time capacity to focus on his comedic value and that being his contribution to the team outside of practice. Luke Cornett has a role and yet maintains a level of premium comedy and humor that I think is unparalleled in the league for someone who plays fairly regular minutes. On top of that, one of the best unique celebrators in the league. I know I've mentioned it on several podcasts. The Cornish game hand is up there with top 3 celebration all time for me, just in its uniqueness and originality. To be able to focus on that level of being hilarious while also contributing to the team on the court, I think is unparalleled league wide. Blake is funny, don't get me wrong.
I can't believe you've done this, Ben. I can't believe you, of all people, have done this. And just hear me out.
Green gets one from White. Now he gives it to White. Blake Griffin throws it down.
Throw it up.
Betrayal, Ben.
Dude,
You did this, Ben.
I had
You
my
did
finger
this,
on
Ben.
the trigger, Jake. I was ready to pick it up as well.
Oh, that's so good.
So good.
Hilarious. All right. Okay. Last one, gentlemen. Jayson Tatum versus Marcus Smart in post finishing. Ben, toss it to you first.
For me, it's Marcus Smart. And again,
perfect.
Haven't looked at the stats.
Yeah.
Eye test.
You have not.
Do you remember Marcus Smart missing a within 6 feet turnaround post up? The answer is no. It's literally never happened. He always makes those shots. He is elite out of that look. And you think about the personnel that he's typically backing down in those situations. We saw him do it a couple of times to Steph Curry in the finals. Smaller guards who get stuck on Smart in that position. He always dominates them. He always gets a clean make, for the most part, out of those looks. Tatum obviously is great in the post. Smart in the post against the opposing point guard is always a favorable mismatch for the Celtics. So a tough one, but for me, it's Marcus Smart. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of haters and detractors for that take. Bring it on.
Spoonie, sounds like you're ready to go the other way here. So go for it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm terrified a little bit of this.
Tatum has 65 post possessions to Marcus's 28. His points per possession is 137 to Smart's 0.93. Tatum is in the 98th percentile in post finishing. He is quite literally the best post finisher in the NBA of any real volume that's not a center.
Analytics, no.
Smart's great for a 6'3" guard. He's the 53rd percentile. I think Z Gamer is correct in that Smart's a better passer out of the post than Tatum. Smart picks people apart from the post. Yes, Landon Lakes as in post up. Sorry. But Tatum is like a cheat code finishing in the post right now. So I think it's got to be Tatum.
Yeah, it's kind of with the post finishing is the tricky one here. Post full stop, maybe with Marcus's passing included. But at the same time, like I think Marcus's value, like the fact that he were able to go to Marcus's post up as a weapon. Again, the finishing versus the passing, just the fact that we're able to go to Marcus in the post, I think is a part of his game that I think has a lot of value to like round out Marcus Smart as a player versus Tatum. If you took away his post play and post finishing, he would still be really, really good. But I mean, I can't really, and I just love, I love that Tatum's become this elite post player. So, sorry, Ben, we're going big JT on this one.
I'll die on this hill, so it's fine.
Yeah,
I
that's
still
fine.
feel like true within myself and what I'm committed to on this take. But
Greeny is smiling somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
Because of this, yeah.
Guys, hour and 11 minutes here. This has been a really fun one, but we got to wrap it up. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. A reminder, we're firing up our playback room for a watch party this Thursday night for the Warriors game. So come and hang out. Come and watch the game with us there. Our friends over at the Green with Envy podcast are going to be back with another pod on this feed early Thursday morning-ish. So shout out to those guys and check out their pod if you haven't already. Spoonie, Jake, love your work. Spoonie, any new pieces that you've got coming up for Celtics blog in the near future?
Hoping this one will drop in the next day or so, but it's Jalen, Jayson, Queen, and how the Jays put pressure on the rim. So it basically just breaks down how they both have like almost very similar like rim pressure points in the paints numbers, but both do it in completely different ways. And also, if you haven't checked out Celtics blog, we're writing stuff for every single episode and it's in addition to the podcast. It's not just a restatement of it. So I'll have these stats and plays and some breakdowns for the Celtics Face-Off segment we just did in the post. You should definitely go check those out every time we have an episode on almost every time we have an episode on Celtics blog.
Yeah, Spoonie sent me some clips to roll during that last segment. I probably forgot about them, so you have to check out Spoonie's piece on CelticsBlog.com for all of that. In the meantime, we'll be back later this week. Until then, go Celtics.